I'm Don McLeod, one of the ministers. Glad you're with us today. Today, always we gather try to read. Be invited to join us on a Zoom call to what we're looking ahead to, but also to have conversation. And you'll hear more about this History Month in Canada. And we are honoring that in many ways, but one of the ways we want to highlight today is that we are hosting through Tony Snow 4 interviews each Sunday afternoon. So we are celebrating Indigenous History Month in Canada by hosting through Tony Snow and his work with Chinook Winds Region 4 interviews each Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So this afternoon, Tony will be interviewing the Very Reverend Stan McKay, the first Indigenous moderator of the United Church, in fact, the first Indigenous person to lead a Protestant denomination in Canada. So Stan McKay will be in conversation with Tony this afternoon. And the last thing I wanted to say about our worship service today is that we've invited children and our youth, some of our youth and our families, to be part of this worship service. So we're so thankful for them participating with us, and it's just great to see their faces on screen this morning with us as we connect with them today. If you're in Calgary, you'll know that while we woke up to a beautiful summer-like morning this morning, last night we had torrential rains, a thunderstorm and lightning and hails the size not only of golf balls but of oranges. So if you've experienced damages or roads are flooded where you live, please be careful, and we hope things are safe where you are. It's just simply a reminder, as one of our neighbors posted on a WhatsApp chat last night to us, when will 2020 end? And of course, a hailstorm is one thing, but we are living right now as a world with all kinds of challenges, from racial injustice to rethinking and re-engaging with a whole new relationship with our police and other authorities, to climate change, to a worldwide pandemic. And so we come together in worship in part to respond to that and to engage with one another and to remind us that there is a larger reality working in us and among us as we live through these trying times. So thanks for being with us. We are a congregation that's formed by 4 core values or practices: hospitality, spirituality, social justice, and risk-taking. And all of these lead us to try to embody a healthy expression of religion in the world. And we know in these times, maybe more than ever, our world needs a healthy religion that embodies and expresses compassion and justice and love and wisdom for our time. So thanks for being here, and may this worship service be a blessing to us so that we may be a blessing for the world.
Hillhurst United Church is an inclusive community of faith, following in the way of Jesus under the banner. Whoever you are, wherever you're at, join us on the journey. Celebrating over 11 years as an affirming congregation, we're a community that not only accepts each other as we are, but welcomes and celebrates the ministry and participation of all persons.
Whatever your age,
whatever your gender identity,
whatever your gender expression,
whatever your health status,
whatever your race,
whatever your sexual orientation,
whatever your ability,
whatever your religious background,
whatever your ethnic background,
whatever your economic circumstances.
Know you are loved. Know God loves you. And we hope you'll feel welcome here at Hillhurst United Church.
Each week when we come together as the Hillhurst congregation, it's important for us to acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territories of the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. We share this land now because of Treaty 7, and this acknowledgement is a reminder that we too are treaty people. Our ancestors made promises on our behalf generations ago, promises that we must now live into. We know people are joining us online from outside Calgary or Alberta, or even beyond Canada. Wherever you live, we encourage you to recognize the traditional lands that you live on and to remember the original peoples of your area. We recognize this land was not empty when Europeans first arrived on what Indigenous peoples call Turtle Island. We remember the actions of the church on this territory, both for good and for ill. We are called to find the courage to speak the truth about these actions as we seek to create new relationships in the spirit of reconciliation. May we live with respect on this land and in peace and friendship with all our relations. Well, good morning again. I'm here with Alinka Poon, who is our Children Ministry Coordinator. Alinka, hi, nice to see you.
Hi, nice seeing you too. It's nice to be back here. It's been a while.
It has been. And back here, and we always say we got to get Alinka upstairs once in a while on a Sunday morning so people can see her. Well, instead, we've come downstairs to the kids' space area, which is what happens. This is the place where the kids gather on Sundays usually.
Yeah, this is my spot right over here. I usually sit in one of the tiny chairs in this room, so I'm well versed in being tiny down here and nobody seeing me. So
we thought it would be fun just to drop in with you to check in and see what's it been like to stay connected to our kids and families during COVID time.
So it's been an interesting challenge in the beginning. We started off by doing mostly a check-in with the children. So we wanted to keep it casual and not make them feel like they had to do too much. And bit by bit, we have reintroduced some of our elements. We now do the lighting of the candle on Sunday mornings. We sing This Little Light of Mine with Miss Bethany, which all the kids in Kids Space know. And we've reintroduced story time, and crafts have been something we started from the beginning because kids really seem to enjoy that. And surprisingly enough, you can do crafts via Zoom. So
Cool.
It's been
amazing how innovative we can be when we have to.
Exactly. Last week was probably our most innovative Sunday. We tried Pictionary for the first time. Our story was the creation story. So I gave kids words that were going to appear in the creation stories to draw on a whiteboard via Zoom. And it was quite fun to do it. And it was really nice to see the kids express themselves in a different way.
So good. Is there, are the kids responding to being on Zoom and being virtual? Are they connecting with each other? Have they adapted?
They have adapted. It's interesting. In the beginning, I used to have to mute everyone because everyone wanted to talk at once. Now they have started doing the things that kids usually do, is just put up their hand and wait for me to notice them in one of the screens and call on them to answer and to do things. So it's definitely more of a classroom feel than it had been in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is June, so we always start thinking about Vacation Bible School and what we can be doing in the summer. And I hear COVID's not going to stop us from doing something fun for the kids in the summer.
No, originally there was going to be a camp here at Hillhurst. And then I follow a place called Illustrated Ministry, and they have put out a curriculum for a Vacation Bible School that is 100% done on Zoom. So we are going to pick that up. We're going to run it for 5 weeks from middle of July to middle of August on Wednesday mornings. And we are going to supply our families with the things that they need for the activities. So the registrations is going to be a must for this one. Sarah, our communications coordinator, was kind enough to already create that event. So it's already live on our events page on our website, so people can go and sign up.
Marvelous. Well, we just wanted to thank you for all you're doing. You're kind of the heartbeat of our children's ministry, and thanks for keeping it alive during these last couple of months. And parents, families, check out the website online and on our events page, and register for the summer. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's a great way to stay connected.
It is, and I should also mention that it's not just kids we're connecting with. I am connecting with parents every Sunday at 1 o'clock, also via Zoom. So that is going to continue as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks for all you're doing, and
we're going to see some of our children and families later in the service as a way of keeping them connected and bringing their stories to life in our worship services too. So thanks, Alinka.
Thanks for having me.
Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like the starry night sky, God is over our heads. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like a river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like the starry night sky, God is over our heads. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like a river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore.
Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like the starry night sky, God is over our head. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like a river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like the starry night sky, God is over our head. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like a river runs to ocean, our home is in God evermore. Like a rock, God is under our feet. Like the starry night sky, God is over our head. Like the sun on the horizon, God is ever before. Like a river runs to ocean, our home is in God
We are so grateful in so many different ways for the people who have stepped up to serve and support our ministry during these times. Special thank you to our music team who is coming now again in person to bring music to us live on Sunday mornings. And Justin is off this Sunday, but Jim Thompson-Goodchild has stepped in, so thank you, Jim, for being part of the music team, along with Meredith and Laurie and, of course, Bruce. We're grateful for them. And we're grateful for so many others that are stepping in different kinds of ways, whether that be through weekly phone calls or supporting in creative ways those who are living with grief right now or mental health challenges. Thank you for those who are reaching out in very creative ways to continue to support our outreach guests who can't come to the building anymore, but are reaching out on the street and making sure that they have supplies they need, or just to see a friendly face again. There are so many ways that people are supporting our ministry, including, of course, continuing to make weekly and monthly donations to support our ongoing work. And thank you to those who continue to do that. If you haven't been able to do that yet, but are able now, we certainly encourage you to make a one-time gift or a regular gift to our ministry so that we can sustain this good work as we seek to serve the world in so many different ways. This morning, as I light the Christ candle, we will enter into a time of prayer, and we light the Christ candle each week as a reminder of the presence of the cosmic Christ, of the living Spirit that is in all of us and all living things, and a reminder of our connection to that Spirit. And we offer prayers in many ways to connect ourselves to that living reality and also to one another and to indeed all creation. So I invite you now to post your prayers if you're able to access the chat either on Facebook or on YouTube. to post your prayers, and as you do that, our music team will sing a prayer song, and we invite you to join along with them.
May God's sheltering wings, the gathering winds protect you. May God's nurturing arms, the cradling arms sustain you and hold you in her love, and hold you in her love. May God's sheltering wings, the gathering winds protect you. May God's nurturing arms, the cradling arms sustain you and hold you in her love, and hold you in her love.
Thank you for posting your prayers, and we remember those who cannot post prayers. We certainly hold up all of your concerns and your hopes for our world today. Let me begin with a prayer remembering Barbara Key, who lost a very dear friend, Ron, in the last couple of weeks. So we remember Barbara as she continues to grieve that loss. And we remember all people. Many of our community members have lost loved ones in the last few months, and it's such a difficult time to express that grief. So we certainly are with them as they walk this time. Other prayers that have come from the community this morning, we want to pray for all people who are suffering during this time economically or in health or with mental health challenges. We want to pray and give thanks for those reaching out through phone calls and helping people feel valued and affirmed. We pray for those people who are compromised, living with compromised immunity as we relaunch back into more of our normal life, whatever that means in these days. Malcolm wants us prayers for his sister Marie, who is having health challenges at this point in time. Prayers for Nico has asked for prayers for a boss who was hit by a car riding his bike. He's awake and out of coma, but has still got a long recovery ahead. We pray for all people who have been suffered damage in any way from the storm last night. And prayers for Norma's family and friends who are grieving her sudden passing this week as well. We offer prayers for people who are heading back to work, who've been off these last months and trying to navigate the new way of doing work and keeping safe as they do that. We remember Chuck this morning, and prayers for Glenn, and prayers for a family friend who is traveling to the U.S. to bring back a family member. We hold all these prayers and those that you are remembering silently or in your own home, and we remember each of you today. May we be a community of prayer and hope for the world in these times. So I invite you now to pray with me our centering prayer this morning, and as we do, then we will enter into a brief time of silence and conclude our prayers with the singing of the Lord's Prayer. So let's pray together. Spirit, may you touch us with your grace. May you touch us with your power. May you touch us with your love. Hear our silent meditation as we offer our concern, our confession, or our celebrations.
today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial, and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, the glory are yours, now and
You can see that it's a beautiful summer day. You can see that we're at the southeast corner of the church. It's a playground here. You can see behind me the steeple, which is the home of the pigeons in our community. Sometimes when you come into our church early in the morning, you can actually hear them cooing above your head. It's actually beautiful. So they may entertain you behind me. We're also in the playground of Kids Space, and give thanks for this place that kids will come and enjoy very soon. During the COVID time, there's lots that we've missed, and one of the things that I've missed is touch. And I've been thinking about this as I thought about the scriptures. And John's Gospel begins with the phrase, and the Word became flesh. God's logos, God's Word, God's desire became flesh in the person of Jesus. And then you hear later in Luke's Gospel a story about Jesus encountering the untouchables, the lepers. Let's hear the story of old as it speaks about touch. When Jesus had come down from the mountain, great crowds followed him. And there was a leper who came to him and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean." Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, "I do choose. Be made clean." Immediately the leprosy was cleansed. Then Jesus said to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to others." May these words of old speak to us in our time and place. As I was thinking about this text and thinking about touch, I was reminded about a visit I had not long ago. An elderly woman who was in her final weeks. And I came, if you passed me my stole, I'll put it on. I came and I put my stole on, as I'm going to do now. And I stood with his daughter and son-in-law at the bed, and we did what's called a body scan, or at least that's what I'm calling it. As the mother lay in her bed, me on one side and the other two on the other side, we placed our hands on her head, and she was conscious, of course, and part of this, and we simply said, we give thanks for Helen's mind, for the things she did with her mind. And people named things like, oh, she was great at crosswords. She was a smart teacher of science in school. She always was filled with good ideas. Then we moved our hands down to her hands, and we held her hands, and we gave thanks for her hands, for the things she knit, for the quilts that she made her grandkids when they were born, for the way she kneaded bread, for the way that she scolded them when they needed to be scolded, for the ways that she held them when they needed to be held, for the ways in which she served others in her church community, her hands. We placed our hands over her chest and her body and gave thanks for her heart and the way she loved, the way that her heart was broken when her husband had died, the way her heart beat fast when she was a kid and in relay races at school, they remembered. And then we moved our hands to her feet, and we actually rubbed her feet and gave thanks for the places she walked, places she traveled, the beaches that she walked, the mountains that she had climbed, the people she had walked to school, the friends that she had walked with in their life. And so in this gathering of head and heart and hands and feet, we touched and gave thanks for the body. And I invite you to think about your body, for your mind, and for your heart and your hands, your feet, and indeed all of your body and what your body does in the world. In these COVID times, we're wrestling with not being able to touch one another, but we're also aware how important touch is to us. And so as we think about the text that we just heard about the leper and Jesus touching and how healing comes in touch, may we be healed as we work through this pandemic and move to the day where you'll come to Hillhurst and we can put out a hand and handshake or give a hug at the door. And when we gather again in this place, the building is closed, but the church is open. And we give thanks that God will touch us through the words, the songs, the silence, the scripture, the creed, and the reflection. May God continue to touch you and I in our journey, lifting us, holding us, and inviting us to walk anew. Thanks be to God. Amen. We are so glad to have Adam and Sienna and Miriam here today. Thank you for coming to Hillhurst United Church. You get the nice view. Yeah. And you get to see what we've done with the sanctuary. Later on, you can find your picture. Maybe you can find Waldo or Obama, or I think the Queen's even in there. Thanks for coming to share with us sort of where you're at. We know that you're all been in your final year of high school and moving on to the next stage of your life. And so I'm just wondering, sort of as an opening kind of question, how you doing? And what was it like ending the year the way you ended it?
I mean, it was probably the strangest way I think it could have ended. And I don't know, at the beginning, I was like, I think excited is the wrong word, but it was just like, all of a sudden school was canceled and it was like so foreign and everything. And, but then it just kind of settled into, oh, we're going to be here for a while. And then I just kind of had to become content with what I had. So, yeah, that's just me though. But, I feel like it's pretty
so sort of excited at first, and then?
Yeah, when I first saw that schools were canceled, I was actually like really happy I didn't have to go to school the following Monday, and I was like, yay. But then like after a couple weeks, I was actually like getting kind of sad. And then when like the final announcement that schools weren't going to reopen, I was actually like really, really sad because I never said goodbye to everyone, and it was like really not good.
Yeah, settling into, oh, this is real, hey? Yeah, how about for you, Miriam?
Yeah, I don't know, it's been weird. It's not like, that's mostly it. Like, it wasn't really like exciting or anything. It was just weird, kind of. I was kind of like, I don't know, at the time, when schools closed, I actually already had a cold. So I had been staying home already. I had missed a day of school already, I think, because I was sick and because I knew the virus was already in the city. I didn't want to be like potentially exposing myself to something else and potentially bringing that to the house. So when schools closed, I was kind of happy they were closed because I knew the virus was here and it was getting bad. But it was just weird adjusting to how we were going to learn from that point on, and kind of weird doing everything online, and kind of, you know, my entire school is now this corner of my desk where I do my schoolwork and I watch my live lessons now, and that's my school and that's it.
So you actually get out of bed to go to school?
I do. I have a desk in my bedroom, and that's where I do things.
I just stay in bed with my laptop.
You just turn the camera off.
Yeah, no camera.
No cameras on most things we use. I don't know. It felt easier for me to focus if I was sitting up somewhere.
So yeah, I think for everybody it was like all of a sudden there was a dawning moment when it was real, right? When this is going to be the new normal for the pandemic. Well, what about graduation day when you realized, oh, this is the day I'm supposed to be marching across the stage? And what was that like?
That was weird too, because that didn't happen, obviously, because pandemic is still here, still existing. Yeah, I was sad that I didn't get to do it. And I don't know, it's weird because I feel like I've missed something that like most people, if not all people, or like a good percentage of people that I know have experienced at some point in their life, is like, oh, walking across the stage and shaking hands with my teachers and getting my diploma. And it's like, that's not an experience I've had, and it's probably gonna be an experience I never have. At least in the same sense that most people would have. So it's weird being in that generation of being like, oh, we don't have that.
Yeah. What about you, for you too?
I think I stand alone when I say this, but I really did not care about graduation. It was mostly, I think, throughout high school, I was always kind of looking at my watch and being like, let me wrap this up, I think. So it would have been good, I think, to get closure, but I just came to realize, like, at the end of the day, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to move on and, yeah, see what's next.
Yeah, I never really realized that the graduation ceremony was so important to people until this happened.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't really excited for it or anything. It was just like something that happens because like there's so many people at my school. It's like hours and hours you're just sitting there, and then like for 5 minutes up on stage and like hours and hours waiting again. So I wasn't really excited. It was just like something that's going to happen. So
something you do. It's a ritual. It's a rite of passage. It's a moving on. Well, then you had to deal with the pandemic and sort of living in that kind of adjustment, and then the death of George Floyd and all that's come from that. That's like another whole layer on all of this. Where do you sit with that? What's going on with you? What do you see it makes you wonder, or what's your thought on that?
Well, I think it's interesting how, I don't know, these like prominent social issues and like of like all times to, you know, demand like a restructuring of society and just like shifting society towards like equality and stuff, like in the middle of a pandemic. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to kind of balance the two. And like, I went to the protests, the 3 of them or whatever. Like, it was incredible. There were thousands of people there and everyone was wearing masks and stuff. But I don't know, it's weird that it's kind of all happened at once, right? And now I feel like, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's just strange having to balance fighting for what you want and then trying to stay safe in the middle of everything going on. So there's a lesson in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think this whole movement thing is really important. Like, it has to happen. But with the pandemic right now, it's just like not the best time for it to happen, even though it has to happen. Like, if that makes sense, just because like everyone's going to the protests and stuff, and then the pandemic's just going to spread more and get worse. But like, it's still like the protests need to happen.
Like, it's weird because it's like looking at what has been happening in the US and kind of like as someone who's like decently not super active, but like decently active on social media, I've seen a lot more things or learned a lot more things about how just intense it has been down there, not even just in the past week, but like how intense it has been for so many years. And it's just kind of like, it feels like it was a buildup that was going to explode at some point, and it just happened to be in the middle of this pandemic, which just, it makes 2020 even weirder than it already has been.
So much for hindsight, right? We're living right in it. Yeah, and when you think about it, I mean, you 3 and your cohort of friends and your classmates are experiencing sort of 2 of the biggest historic events ever, you know, with the pandemic, and then I would say a resurgence of the whole civil rights movement, and real work is being asked for this time, deeper work, wider work with not just Black lives, but I hope our Aboriginal people, all of us looking in the mirror and also trying to make systemic change. So if we feel a bit numb, it's because we're in it, right? We're experiencing this whole thing right now. In the last couple of months we've been in it. So
yeah, it's actually weird. The same week that the protests really started, the movements really started gaining weight, was the same week we learned about the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s in social studies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was like weird timing.
It's like a very tactile experience. Open the door and you're right in it. Yeah. So when you think about that, maybe it's really hard when we're in it to get perspective. But when you look at your life, do you have dreams? Like, what do you hope for yourself? What do you want to do with your life? And I don't mean job, unless it relates. But how do you want to touch the world? How do you want to be engaged?
I think I just want more than anything to, this is so cliche, but like help others. I just want like. I'm not like looking to be like the forefront of some like huge like movement or like leader in something. I mean, that'd be great, but like I just feel like just like kind of like the day-to-day work, helping people with maybe it's because I want to be like a therapist, but it's just like the little things, helping people deal with their issues, and then I feel like that'll just kind of create like a ripple effect. And I don't know, I feel like if you can make one person's life a little better, then it's like worth it, That's
nice.
Just me.
I mean, I've always wanted to do stuff to help animals, so
nice.
like I'm going to go into animal health technology and stuff, and I've always wanted to like own an animal sanctuary or something. So
nice.
Yeah, it is what I'm going to do as a job, but it's also my biggest passion is art.
Art.
So yeah, visual art. And I always like telling stories and kind of conveying emotions and everything through that. So I guess I also want to help people too. So I guess like if I have the ability to like use whatever platform I have or whatever platform I gain, whether it be through art or social media through art, because a lot of advertisement and getting yourself out there as an artist does revolve around using social media nowadays. It's difficult to not do.
Yeah.
So it's like. It's something I've seen a lot is like if you have a platform or if you ever gain like a larger platform on anything or any circumstance to use, if you can use that in a positive manner, that's what I want to do. Like any platform, whether it's like, making a cartoon or a movie or something like that, or working on a movie, to use that platform, or if it's like a social media more like platform and using that as like a positive force to kind of, help people or something.
Nice. Exciting. So if you had one hope that your church would be engaged in any of this, what message do you have for the church? What do you think the church should be doing?
In the middle of all of this?
Anytime. We'll take any advice you have.
Recognizing their mistakes, I think, is the biggest one.
Recognizing mistakes.
Yeah. However, I think that can be interpreted as just important. Put your ego aside for once, I think.
Nice. What should we do?
I think, and I know this church does it already, but I think this goes for like the entirety of the United Church, I guess, is like kind of like what Adam said, listening to people and listening to when they have like criticism or when they're not feeling heard or anything, and using those opinions to kind of figure out, okay, what can we do to make that not something this person doesn't feel this way, and so that everyone can be included in this space.
Nice.
Yeah, just like supporting everybody no matter what, and like helping people with their problems, not like excluding anyone for any reason and stuff. This church pretty much does that, but yeah.
We try. Yeah. We've got to admit our mistakes. But I think you're reminding us about inclusion, about listening, about parking our ego aside to really be engaged fully. Well, I want to thank you for this. I think that we're in good hands if you're leading. So I'm happy about that. And we're really excited to hear about your next steps, wherever you go. And as you consider, what am I going to do with my life? May you know that you have our support and our encouragement as you go. And we'll look to you and listen to you as you guide us along the way. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
I came across an article this past week in the New York Times. It tells the story about how 3 teenage boys were making their way home from school in Houston. And they were chatting about the basketball game the night before and what they were going to do on the weekend. And one of the boys posed a question to the group: what do you want to do with your life? There was a bit of laughter, and then one of the boys said, I want to reach out and touch the world. That young boy 30 years ago was George Floyd. I want to reach out and touch the world. What an answer. What a great question. It was a question I remember as a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old and a 28-year-old and a 38-year-old and a 48-year-old and a 58-year-old. What are you going to do with your life? What do you want to do with your life? I love the question, and I love George's answer. I want to reach out and touch the world. Little did he know that he would touch the world the way his life and his death have touched the world in the last 2 weeks. Now, if you read on in the story, you hear about a troubled life of George, that he had days that were bad and sad and depressed and addicted, that he ended up in jail, that he struggled like all of us in life. He actually ended up as a security guard with the very person who had his knee on his neck and killed him as he said the words, I cannot breathe. I can't breathe. It's a remarkable story to think about this teenager saying, I want to reach out and touch the world. And then to cycle through to hear the story about this police officer with his knee on his neck and the words, I can't breathe. It's a powerful story about life and suffering and struggle. But I love the phrase, I want to touch the world. I want to reach out and touch the world. You know, when I think of this pandemic and all that's gone on, we may have reflected ourselves on the things that we've missed. We may have missed our freedom. Some have said they missed the parks. Some have said that they miss a certain pub or a coffee shop. There's certain things that we have missed in this lockdown. But I got to tell you, one of the things I've missed the most is touch. I've missed in particular church touch. That is the touch that happens on a Sunday. The touch of a handshake of someone. The touch of the passing of the peace. Observing people touch one another on the back or pat each other on the back. I miss the touching of music that touches me in my soul. But most of all, I miss the church rub, the off conversation. How was your week? And someone shares a bit of story. Or someone has a chance to tell you about a relative who's ill or something they love about a sports game the week before. There's that intimate conversation, as well as that passing conversation that touch invites. I have deeply missed touch. You know, Alan Monk said it's the smile, but I'm a huggy, touchy, feely kind of guy, and I miss the handshakes. I miss the touch. And it's an awkward feeling to bump into someone and see them kind of step back, bracing themselves, and afraid that you're going to lunge towards them. Touch is such an important part of being a human being. And the touch that we have when we gather in the sanctuary at worship is so important. The passing of the peace, the touching of the bread, the touching of another. Touch is such an important thing. I'm missing the touch that we experience at church. Touch is part of our ordinary life. I had the privilege of golfing this past week, and it was strange to drive in a cart. I'd rather walk any day. I love the conversation of walking and talking with another person. I miss the touch of a handshake at the end of the game or the slap in the back after a good shot. There's something about touch and that engagement with other people that I really miss, that touch. When I posed this question to the people who are putting worship together with me this week, I asked them about touch, and a woman on the screen through our Zoom call began to cry as she said, I got to tell you, my daughter came to see me, and we live in a condo, and for whatever reason I was going to go down to see her, but she ended up on the condo and coming up to my condo, and I opened the door, and there she was. And my daughter, with tears in her eyes, and said this, screw COVID, and threw her arms around me, and we hugged and we cried. She said, I had no idea how much I missed the hug of my daughter. Yesterday I was on a Zoom call with a colleague in Washington. His Reformed church is 3 blocks from the White House. And he was telling me about, or as the conversation was unfolding over an hour, talking about the experience in Canada and the US and our churches and stuff, an elderly couple who had been on the screen for the entire conversation hadn't said much, George and Frita. You could see her reaching for the screen as she pushed the button to unmute. And then when she yelled in, "Can you hear me?" We all sat back, and she leaned in quietly and she said, "You know, the thing I've missed the most is the hug of my grandkids." She said, "They come to visit me once a week, and they come and they ring the doorbell. But we don't even open the door. I can just see them." As she cried, she said, "You have no idea what it's like to see someone you want to touch and hold and you can't. You have to see them through the glass." We all perhaps have had these kinds of experiences this last while. Times where we wanted to reach out and touch and we were stopped or stopped by someone else. Touch is such an important part of being a human being. And I think I've heard stories these last while about how people are trying to overcome it. I've heard a story about a condom hug. I haven't seen the picture, but my mind goes to it, where people are wrapped in plastic and they actually can bump into each other. I'll leave that to your imagination. I also heard about a tree in Scarborough. There was a family who had put a face on a tree and at Halloween. And this was supposed to be a scary face, but they brought it out during the pandemic, and they've got it up there with a sign that says "free hugs." And the family had been amazed how many people will look both ways and then gently go up and give the tree a hug. Amazing. When I saw it, I said, we must be desperate if we're going to hug that. We're trying to find different ways so that we can touch one another. Touch is one of the 5 ways we have in love languages. You know the book, The Love Languages. It talks about how some people show their love by the giving of gifts, or by words of affirmation, or by acts of service, or quality time. And the final one is physical touch. And the book talks about how important physical touch, whether it's just a gentle touch or a sexual encounter that is deeply touching and erotic and passionate, or whether it is just simply a handshake. Touch is such an important part of our being. It brings us alive. It awakens us. Physical touch. You know, I was doing my first, and maybe my first of 2 COVID weddings this summer. 2 weeks ago, I drove up near Ponoka to marry Eric and Siobhan. And they had planned a big wedding, but had to cancel it down to a small gathering of 25. We met outside in the rolling hills near Ponoka there, and there were 25 people invited, and the chairs were all separated apart. And I knew this was going to happen. I was trying to think, this doesn't seem right at a wedding. It's a time of touching and hugging and gathering. And I thought to myself, what could we do? Thankfully, the father of the bride decided he would come hell or high water. He was walking his daughter down that aisle, and you could see the pride in his face. But as people gathered, they were invited to take a piece of wool. And I literally connected one person to the other of the whole 25 who were there. And when we were all connected, I invited them to pull on it so you could feel the tension and the push and pull between us. And we did the entire service holding on to the yarn, feeling an occasional tug this way or that way. It was a good substitute for the kind of touching we might do at a wedding, but it reminded us about how we are all connected, how we are all interconnected, and how we need that human touch. We're trying to find ways in these days to think about and secure a sense of touch, because touch is so deeply important. We know this theologically through our religious experience. The word touch appears 46 times in our Bible. Touch is an important way in which we speak what cannot be spoken through our touch. And there are many stories of Jesus encountering people who yearned to be healed, in particular lepers. Think about this. The lepers in the day were the ones who were pushed outside the edges of the city because they were unclean. You made a wide berth around them because you were afraid you might catch it from them. Sound familiar in our pandemic time? They were considered unclean, and yet this is the very people Jesus would go to talk and to touch and to heal. And I imagine to myself as he touched and they were miraculously healed, as they looked at their sores fall from their bodies, how they would want to leap up and give Jesus a hug after years of being pushed aside, untouched by others. I can imagine someone thinking to themselves, I'm healed, I've got to find that person who gave me some money in my time of need, the person who didn't walk that far away but engaged in a conversation about how I was. There's something about that touch that invites us to want to touch others. Touch is such an important part of our religious tradition. In the beginning of John's Gospel, we talk about the Word becoming flesh. The Word is Jesus, God taking on flesh, so that in the life and story and teachings of Jesus, we could understand who God is, what God's like. And in all that Jesus did, we get an idea of what God imagines for us. So the Word becoming flesh is like God saying, okay, you're not getting it, so look at what this guy does. This is what I desire. This is my dream, in how he calls the world to come to be. The Word becoming flesh. Our United Church Creed, which we're going to see in this service, says the same thing. The Word became flesh. Word and flesh come together, and they matter. You know, in this New York Times story that I mentioned at the beginning, you know, you hear George Floyd saying that he wanted to reach out and touch the world. And surely he did in the last 2 weeks. You've seen in which he's touched people to encourage them to stand up, to speak out, to write out, to march, calling the whole world to look again at Black Lives Matter, calling us here in Canada an Indigenous Month to look at our relationships with the Indigenous community. He had no idea 30 years ago that those words would actually come alive in his body. And aren't we better for those words come alive in his body? You know, the article goes on and it says there was a pattern to this story. When George was 17, he said, I want to reach out and touch the world. In his death, he said, I can't breathe. But he also said these powerful words, Mama, Mama, and he died. Now, I don't know about you, but I imagine that in his dying that he was seeing either his mother, who had died a few years ago. In fact, George had his mama's name tattooed on his belly. Either he was seeing his mama, or perhaps he was seeing the Mother Divine, the God who knows and loves and heals and touches and embraces each and every one of us in this life and invites us to the next. And the image I have is that in George's death, he died and was then held by the Divine Mother God, who held him, who wept with him, and who smiled him and walked him into new life. You know, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I think at my deep core, I know it's about connection. And it's about relationships, as we heard last week. The Trinity invites us into relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the Creator in a divine dance. So as you go about this week, may we, though we yearn for deeper touch and connection with others, know that we are touched and held, loved, forgiven, and set free by the Divine Mother, who calls to us to come, trusting in life and death and life beyond death. God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God. Amen. Well, what a great morning we've had with our children and our youth, both offering their gift through the creed and through an interview and then on the piano. We give thanks that you've been with us at Hillhurst to consider the importance of touch in our life. And we hope that something's touched you as we've been together this morning. And we trust that as we leave and move into the world this coming week, we go trusting we are not alone. So go in the name of God, Divine Mother, Jesus, friend, and Spirit, who is redeeming and creating and touching each and every one of us. Go in peace. Have a great week. Thank you.
Touch our hearts that we may know compassion. From failing embers build a blazing fire. Love strong enough to overturn injustice, to seek a world more gracious. Come touch and bless our hearts. Come touch our souls that we may know. Touch and bless our souls. Come touch our minds and teach us how to reason. Set free our thoughts to wonder and to dream. Help us to open doors of understanding, to welcome truth and wisdom. Come touch and bless our minds. Come touch us here, the moments we are fragile. In our weakness, your great strength reveal, that we may rise to follow and to serve. Steady now our nerve. Come touch and bless our wills. Come touch us now, this people